He got hit with so many typicallys and uniques.
Well, that's unique. We don't really see that very much.
Yeah, typical or unique. Ayden was unique today, or there was
Right.
something typical today.
Oh, yes, that is very typical. We see it all the time.
Oh, don't worry about it. That's typical.
Oh, every child is unique, so we can't say what is typical.
That's typical. See you later.
We call it the typical unique conversation. Welcome back to Typically Unique. I'm Kim Aponte, and I'm here with my husband, Carlos.
Hello. And not the last episode, but the episode before, we had just finished, or we're just getting back to the hospital for round number 7. Mm-hmm. The goal of this round is to get Ayden prepped for the bone marrow transplant.
Yep.
So I know we have a nice journal entry here to kind of get us talk about all the things that we had to do to prep for that, right?
Yeah, so I have a lot of journal entries for a few days leading up to the transplant, and we just wanted this episode to share all the prep, all the treatments, some scenarios and situations we ran into leading up to this. So this is March 29th, 2012. And I said, okay, I can finally keep my eyeballs open long enough to post an update. It has been a very long week so far. At 6:15 a.m. on Wednesday, the transport people showed up to get Ayden for his radiation, but we held him off till 6:30 because he can't arrive for his appointment too early and sit in the waiting area because we don't want him exposed to anything. We didn't get back to the room until almost 9 a.m., just in time for the doctors to do rounds. Here is what Ayden has to do for radiation. 1, sit on a hospital bed in front of a wall, stick straight back and knees bent, and they tape them together, and his hands in his lap. The machine is across the room from him, and there is a glass plate on the machine. On the first appointment, they had to position Ayden and figure out, using shadows, how to place 3 shapes on the glass so that they block his head and neck, his knees, and his feet and ankles perfectly. There is a lung block attached to his bed. Ayden sits in that position for 15 to 20 minutes while they tape all those shapes down, and then they take an X-ray to send via computer to the doctor, who is hiding like the Wizard of Oz in some other room down the hall. He looks at the X-ray and okays it, or he tells them to adjust things. Once it is okayed, then Ayden has to sit there for about 15 to 20 more minutes while they run the radiation. Ayden gets to get off the bed and sit in a chair for about 5 to 10 minutes while they swing the bed around to do his left side. He repeats all the steps above for the other side of his body. Then he is done, and that is one whole session, and he does it 2 times a day until tomorrow. Tomorrow he is done with that. I hate seeing him in that room, knowing what they are doing to him. It makes me sick. I told Carlos, be glad he doesn't have to see it. The radiation itself is painless, but the way they have Ayden sitting is extremely uncomfortable for him, especially the first time when he felt like his tailbone was sitting on metal. Then when we went back for session number 2, we found out there was a memory foam pad he could have. That gave him a lot of relief. So we were off the floor where his room is to go to radiation for about 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night. Ayden usually naps after the morning session, and I go shower and eat at the Ronald McDonald House, and then Ayden is usually awake and eats a little popcorn and some popsicles after the afternoon-evening session. Tonight he is laughing away while he plays a game on the computer and chats with a friend. I think they are playing the same game and can see what each other are doing because they keep laughing about it. I love hearing him laugh.
So the radiation itself is new, right? We didn't have any of this radiation in any of the previous rounds that he did, all the previous 6 rounds. So they're doing this radiation. Why the radiation this time as compared to before?
Right. So they could not get him into remission. He still had about 5% cancer going into this. We're calling it the 7th round, but they're really it's just the prep for the bone marrow. So the new doctor, her protocol which this was not typical. They usually do not use radiation for patients that are going into a bone marrow transplant. It's usually just chemo, but because they couldn't get rid of all the cancer, they're adding in this radiation. That's her protocol that she used successfully before. So that's why he has to go through that. And man, I just felt so bad for him.
Yeah, and this is Dr. Green that has done this. So this is our kind of angel person that came in, when we were kind of at our lowest, because Ayden would not get into remission and was relapsing, and we're certainly having some problems. And the radiation at the time is not painful, but it does have some side effects, right? That's why they're blocking all this other stuff, because it's tearing up your body a little bit.
Right. It was considered full body radiation, but they were protecting his head. So these shapes they're not on Ayden, they're on this glass that is blocking it, and they have to line it up. They have to make sure they got it right, because they're protecting his brain and his lungs and his knees and feet. So,
right.
And then it's going everywhere else. But okay, so today, when we got back at 9 a.m., the doctors did rounds as soon as we got back. Then I got a cup of coffee and went out to the window area to call my mom. And instead, I got approached by the psychologist, or at least I thought it was the psychologist. I sat down with her and we talked for about an hour, because there was a lot I wanted her to understand. And then as she was about to leave, she said, "I'll have to share this with the attending doctor before she comes to see you." Insert bugged out eyeballs and massive steam coming out of ears. I blew a gasket. I told her, and probably the rest of the floor that could hear me, that I was not about to repeat everything I just told her for a second time to the doctor who should have been here to see me herself. So I just told her to forget it. I thought it would be good to have their expertise and help through all of this, but I am not able to add more stress.
Well, so our main focus, and we've said this throughout, is we just have to cure Ayden of this AML cancer.
Yep.
That's our focus. So, but we also recognize that Ayden was going through some things, or exhibiting some things, that we thought someone should be aware of and maybe talk to him about. It just seemed like he was acting a little bit differently. So we did seek out someone to come and talk to us, and we went through some, testing and all this stuff, and then it just kind of faded away, after a while. Now it looks like someone's coming back and, having a conversation in probably the most stressful, important time of Ayden's care, prepping for this bone marrow, which is life or death situation, and having this discussion. We still recognize that there's those issues with Ayden that need to be talked about and worked through, but maybe this wasn't the best time. So I understand your frustration, but in retrospect, I think we both have some guilt about really not pushing a lot of that, because it's no secret that Ayden struggled with some things after all this had happened, dealing with maybe mental health, and, we still don't have a lot of answers, and we'll talk about that later. But what was your thought process in all this, and in retrospect?
Now and then, I felt good that we were continuing to ask. We were asking for support. We were asking for help. We've always asked for help and support. There's many times we kept asking.
Right.
So I feel good about that. I feel guilty that it just seemed to never work out. It just never seemed to work out. And so, yeah, it's not a big deal that the main doctor sent the intern down to collect all the information, but Ayden has a long medical history that I took the time to sit down to go over with her for over an hour. It took to go through all this. And I thought I was speaking to the doctor, to the real head doctor, and I got blindsided that she showed up in the first place. I didn't know
Right.
ahead of time. I don't like that, and I don't understand why they they do that. We had rounds that morning. Why didn't they say during rounds, hey, this is on the agenda for today?
Well,
maybe if mental health care was part of the whole system, that could be implemented. That would have been helpful, and then just thinking that I was going to have to take the time to repeat everything all over again, doing it because she wouldn't relay it the same way I did, as much as she might try. I didn't have the strength to do that again.
Well, and I think, it's pretty well known that, and you've said it 100 times on these 29 episodes, Kim wants to know the plan, right? And anything that we don't know ahead of time, it doesn't fit into our schedule. We are planning out minutes, of what's going to happen throughout the day, to help keep, him comfortable. We know when meds are coming in. We're checking those. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff to advocate for him. And this was a curveball that, hey, I got a few minutes. I can go talk to my mom. I can sit in the window, get a little sunlight, and instead she spent her time doing this and, hey, we're going to have to do it again. We don't have time for that right now. So understand.
Shouldn't be adding stress.
Right.
It should be helping to relieve stress.
And speaking of stress,
in my opinion, and that's my next 3 words. Speaking of stress, they have shut down one whole section of this hospital floor because of water leaks in the patient room bathrooms. So I have also spent a good part of this week meeting with hospital personnel and doctors to reassure me that it was completely safe for Ayden to be here. And now that I am comfortable that it is safe, it is still a horrible situation, with everyone squeezed into one part of the floor, not private places to take phone calls or eat. Just not the best situation that you would like. So just to paint the picture of what this situation is like, so you walk in onto the floor, and there's this big main area, and that's like the main wing of this pediatric oncology floor. And everybody was crammed into that wing because they had the middle wing blocked off, and then off of that, there's a further back section. So this is A, and then there's B in the middle that's blocked off, and then C in the background. And they were having plumbing issues, so we keep getting these leaks. So the leaks were either coming from true plumbing issues where water's just leaking, or they were coming from that floor above where the patients up there are, clogging things. So we have these issues going on. And at a time where your child is completely immunocompromised, we talked earlier with his immune deficiency that he wasn't the boy in the bubble with his immune deficiency that he was born with, but going into transplant time, they really are making you like that, like no immune system. So we were very worried about that.
And, and one other thing that kind of piled on top of that,
right.
We had heard, a couple rounds before of parents of a patient had told us that the port or the Broviac port that they had got infected with mold. And having water on the floor and all this stuff, we were like, oh my gosh, is there mold? We would even check under the sinks because it's dark and it's wet, is there any mold under, so we were on, when Kim said we would talk to, some of the hospital personnel and the doctors, we had like the general manager of the hospital,
the CEO of the hospital,
come to our room and assure us that they are taking all precautions and they're testing and doing air tests and room tests to make sure that these rooms are safe for these patients. So it wasn't just a casual conversation. They had to make us feel great about this to stay there because Ayden was going through the worst part of this and was very susceptible to anything. So we were heightened alert.
Yeah, and it wasn't a crazy concern. We had many times where we dealt with either the flooding or all this. There was clearly plumbing issues going on. So, we had everybody involved.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
A lot. Okay, so crappy surroundings or not, Ayden is in great spirits, handling the radiation like a champ and loving the times he gets to talk with his friends. The last 2 rounds of radiation are tomorrow. Ayden woke up this morning and wanted to go down to the game room to play his video games, so I got him all set up down there, and he's been playing all morning. I ran to the Ronald McDonald house to do some laundry, and I brought him back some pancakes that they had there. Then later this afternoon, he was still hungry, and I put steroids. So I went down to the cafeteria and had to ask them to make me a fresh batch of chicken strips and French fries because Ayden is on a low pathogen diet, which means nothing that could have bacteria. No lettuce, no raw fruits or vegetables unless they are washed extremely well and peeled. No lunch meat, nothing that sits under lights to keep warm. So they made his fresh food, and he only ate the chicken tenders, but that is still good. So that's another concern that we had to keep him safe was his diet. We weren't allowed to give him anything that could potentially have these pathogens on it. So I'm sure at first the cafeteria people were they were used to me because I was always like, could you make
You had to
some
make
French
it fresh.
fries?
Yeah.
But at this time, I just explained to them, hey, this is what's going on, and they were totally fine with it. So
Right.
they know where they're working at.
True.
Ayden is getting a huge bag of chemo that will run for 12 hours, and then another huge bag back to back for another 12 hours. 24 total hours of chemo. They just added a 3rd pump to his IV pole, which allows them to run 7 things through his IV. I don't think they ever run that many at once, but I have no idea what to expect. His IV pole is like scaffolding. They can keep adding to it to add more pumps if needed. Ayden has his new port in his chest, and he hasn't made a big deal of it at all. This is the type of metaport most of us are probably familiar with under the skin. Except with most people, they just access it when needed. Run an IV, then take the IV right out again. But with Ayden, they were going to have to put in this like special needle and like leave it in there. So that they could access it if they needed it. And then he had a PICC line in his arm, and it had 3 lines coming out of it. So the Metaport gives them 4 lines to access when he gets ready for the transplant. They won't have to access it until he runs a fever, though. And we have the hurricane spray and the EMLA cream for all that. So this Metaport that he had to have, this is probably what most people are familiar with. So it's a port, and they put it under your skin. That thing was a bane of our existence the whole entire time. It was a waste for him to even get it. I think they tried to use it one time, and when they put the medicine in, it like all the fluid it didn't even go in the port the right way it was supposed to. It just went under his skin, so he had this huge bump of liquid in his body. They just had to wait till his body absorbed it, so that was super uncomfortable for him. He already had the PICC line in his arm, and that had 3 lines coming out of it, and that worked for him, and he loved that because it was just wrapped with an ace bandage. And that's when, remember we talked about cutting his t-shirts?
Yeah.
This is when I cut the t-shirts. So every t-shirt had the sleeve cut off here for this PICC line.
Yep.
But he was way more comfortable with that. So,
And his IV pole too was,
yeah.
I mean, when he first went in, he had probably 1 IV bag up there, maybe for some fluids or something, until they assessed him, very early on. So it was just 1 pole, 1 IV bag,
1 pump.
1 pump. That's it. Now they have multiple pumps on here. They've added some branches to this tree that you call it, right? So he's pushing around instead of just, a 1 pole tree. Now there's like 3 branches on there. There's bags all over. These bags are heavy, and he has to, lug this around because he's tethered to it.
Yep.
Where that goes, he goes to the restroom, that goes with him. He goes to the game room, that goes with him. So, I mean, this thing is, by this time, is huge.
It's just growing every day.
Huge.
They're adding medications and things like that. And you'll get to see it when we do the transplant episode, because we do have video of that. So. Yep. Yesterday, Ayden finished radiation, and it was a marathon stressor for me. First, the power went out when he was in the radiation room getting the radiation. Yep, mid-treatment, and the power goes out. I can't believe our timing lately. So we were out of the room for way longer than he should have been, and a million little things freaked me out, but it is over, and today has been better so far. I will spare you all the details, but just a note to myself that this was the day I had the showdown with the transport people. I am on the verge of tears or screaming at someone constantly now. I'm just so full of anxiety. We've waited and waited, and now the day is almost here, and we are in the process of wiping out Ayden's marrow. So it is really, really happening. I am comforted by the nurses, though. They are on it, and you can tell how serious they take it.
You first, because I want to bring up something that maybe we just didn't talk about before, but
you'll remember?
I will.
Okay.
I will.
So the transport note that I made to myself. So this is just another example of things that I was very concerned about with Ayden. Every time we took him, we're on a HEPA filtered floor. He can't eat certain foods because we can't have the pathogens. And every time they mention these things to me and are giving me these cautions, I'm okay to take those cautions, but then don't put us in a situation where you are disregarding those cautions. Mm-hmm. And every time we went off the floor, they have these transport people. They're the ones that come push the bed. And we're going deep into the hospital for radiation, way into the hospital, down into the basement. They put us in this little room off to the side. It was a pretty empty room, maybe a chair in there, a patient bed. That's it. No windows. There's no staff around. You're completely isolated, and just left until like someone says, okay, come back for the radiation. And when it was time, when radiation was over, they would just put us back in that room, and you would have no idea when someone was coming to take you back. And it could be 5 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, and you wouldn't, and that just did not, I did not like that at all. So I had put up with that many times. He went off the floor for x-rays, echocardiograms, all these things. And this would happen most of the time. So by this point, I'm like, okay, I'm done. And I just had it out with the transport people and I needed a scheduled time, like you're coming to pick him up. So that's what happened that day.
So now you reminded me of two things. So when we did go off the floor, it wasn't just the transport people, but you remember we're on the oncology floor, second floor, rainbow babies and children, cancer patients. We would go to the dentist at Rainbow Babies and Children, or we would go to somewhere else, like she said, x-rays or radiation or whatever. And there is a specific protocol that they must follow on the second floor. I think you know where I'm going with this, right? So one of the things was, because infection is a bad thing for these patients, that they have a rule on the second floor that if they inject anything, into his ports, they have to take an alcohol pad and rub it on that port for how long, Kim?
It's supposed to be 15 seconds.
We would go to other parts of the hospital and they would, inject him with something, pain relief or something like that, just to, or give him some medicine.
Or in the ER getting ready to get put to sleep.
And they would just take out the little thing, they'd rub it on there for a couple seconds, and we were hawks, right? We're like, 15 seconds, please. You need to do that for 15 seconds. And they would do it for and somebody had the gall, I think, to tell you, well, we only do 5.
Yeah, they said, well, that's how we do it here. And I was like, wow, that's not what we do for these patients.
So it's almost like they need to put like a red flag or something to denote that, these are immune compromised people, right? You know, go ahead. You're going to say something.
I'm
I got
so
one more
crazy. I taped signs all over his pole, his IV pole. So I had a sign on there that said, "Please clean his port for 15
seconds.
seconds."
Yeah. And I was, you know, I mean, she got me to like, I'm literally 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000. You know, I'm like counting it out, you know, because we wanted to make sure that, you know, something stupid wouldn't happen.
But
right?
remember, we have that parent in our ear saying, "Hey, we think our kid got an infection through the port." So, I mean, that's just on our minds. So we were just being hyper vigilant.
And the other thing I wanted to mention, because you said, you know, that the nurses and doctors, I think you said they're on it, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we have to say, I think throughout, you know, we got very, very good care. But I want to reiterate that there's a new team that has been introduced to us, right? We have a new head nurse. We have Dr. Green. So we have a little bit of a different team who, in this instance, what they're doing, which is, you know, this transplant, you know, they are following protocol. They are giving us the plan daily. They are keeping us well informed. They are literally on it. And I guess I just wanted to reiterate that this is a new team that's kind of come in. Everybody's done a very nice job, but this team is top tier.
Yes, they
super
are.
top tier.
Yep.
Okay, that was it.
Okay, so Ayden makes me proud beyond words for how well he continues to take everything, and I mean everything. From not being able to eat during radiation, to sitting in pain from radiation, to being embarrassed by mom who's questioning someone or chewing out the transport guy, to getting chemo for the 8th time and taking boatloads of pills. And I'm not exaggerating. He will take 10 at a time. We found that glutamine stuff in a pill form at Walmart, but he has to take 20 of them a day, and he doesn't care. He would do that over drinking nasty stuff any day. And through it all, he continues to text his friends. Even when he would finish a round of radiation, he would pick up his phone and text someone. Or he would tell his friends, I have to go get radiation now. It just breaks my heart that he had to do that. Then when it's over, he gets right back on the computer with them. So this part about the glutamine, so I can't remember what he needed that for, but at the hospital, he had to drink it, and it was completely nasty. And, you know, even if we think it tastes bad, Ayden really he couldn't handle it to drink it. So I would always, this is another, you know, advocating moment, always ask, does it come in some other form? Is there something else we can give? They said it came in pills. They didn't have the pills. So I went out and found the pills. Mm-hmm. That's what I would do. Well, where could we get them then?
You know, and, you know, even though kids said it's really nasty, but, you know, you have to understand too, and I know we've mentioned this a few times about Ayden, if I took some NyQuil, you know, I'd be like, you know, it's not that bad, but it's not that good. It would disgust him to drink NyQuil because he has very specific tastes and textures that just he doesn't like, and he will literally refuse. If they bring in a cup of medicine, he's like, I ain't taking it, you know, and there's no holding him down or, you know, getting in his mouth. He will not take it. So Kim did an excellent job in trying to find, whether it was at the hospital, at their pharmacy, or Walmart, to find, you know, or you would even contact our home nurse.
Yeah, this happened quite a few times during the 2 years with different medications, but sometimes just that hospital pharmacy didn't have it. And I would say, okay, well, I'm going to call my home health nurse and see if they can get it, or, you know, a specialty pharmacy that could get it. So
right.
Always ask and see if there's a way. So Ayden will continue to get chemo until Monday. Tuesday, he doesn't get anything. It's his day of rest. And Wednesday is the big day. So we're getting so close. I do know the donor is actually donating his cells on Monday and Tuesday, and they will be flown to us at Rainbow, supposedly from far away. That's all I know or think I know, but I know you all are curious too. I'm going home just for Sunday and coming back Monday to stay the rest of the week with Ayden. We will all be here at the hospital on Transplant Day. I will keep you posted.
Wow. So exciting. We're 2 to 3 days out, right? Before he gets to transplant. You know, I feel like, this donor, because we had, we're talking about 2 or 3 days to go, but we had 10 days of conditioning for Ayden. We had to choreograph this with somebody who's far enough away that this stuff has to be flown in. We had to choreograph those 10 days with them and their conditioning at the donor side with everything that's going on with Ayden. Now, last time we tried to do some of this, there was a hiccup, and even though the person went in and was getting all prepped, it didn't go through. So I was
because they didn't get Ayden in remission.
Yeah, Ayden wasn't ready for the bone marrow transplant. So I was nervous that this person would be like, hey, look, I tried this once, I gave it my best shot, but, I can't take any more time off, or, this is really putting me out. I kind of went through this before. How do I know it's going to happen again? So I was just thankful to hear that this person's still involved. They went through the 10 days of condition. They're into it for about a week, and we're just a few days away from getting this to happen. So,
and I was a nervous wreck because to learn that the donor was giving the bone marrow on Monday and Tuesday, and it would be to us on Wednesday or by Wednesday, like, I always picture, when someone's getting like maybe a heart transplant, and they're carrying the cooler and you're like, oh, don't let anything happen to that. It needs to arrive at its destination. That's all I was focused on after we got to that Monday, and thinking of, what was happening, and just please let it get here.
And wait till the next episode so we can show you what that actually is, because it is not what I expected, but it's pretty awesome. So
yeah, we have videos that we took of the day, so we're going to share that on our next episode. We had a lot that we shared in this episode of just, we are going through the steps the way that we needed to, and how many hiccups and little things happened, but we're still managing to get there and trying to keep him as safe as possible.
Absolutely.
In that journey. So on our next episode, we are going to talk about the actual transplant, and we'll be able to show you that. So we hope you join us back for that, and we will see you then.
Bye.
Bye.